that they are covered under the assets declaration regime. And so I have presented mine this morning. I've taken this step of presenting these forms publicly as a way of injecting some openness and transparency into the process of assets declaration. I've always maintained that while it is all well and good to punish corruption, a more effective way of addressing the canker is preventing it from occurring in the first place. I honestly believe that if properly curated and enforced, the assets declaration process can become a sustainable tool for tackling corruption. I've also taken this step to send an unmistakable signal to all public office holders, especially those that I have appointed, that I take the declaration of assets very seriously and expect full compliance from them. I've asked the Chief of Staff to send word to all appointees to ensure that they declare their assets by the end of the first quarter of this year, that is by 31st March 2025. I wish to stress that any appointee failing to meet this deadline would face severe sanctions, not excluding removal from office.
President Mahama does not cease to amaze me in the second coming. My brother, my sister, I have all of a sudden become a huge fan of the president. Unapologetically. Can I just say that I am the biggest fan of this president?
You know, Mahama, through a strong warning, Eddie man appointees. Nansem bang, na John Domani Mahama eka. After say what day a warning, the man appointees nini no. A lot of Ghanaians about wantene. Eka so much mu say, Omon dan John say John Domani Mahama bet about wantene. Abekasa ansem one. That's what be ye nyoma bia and dan kasa John Domani Mahama ekoye. Na nyoma bang, na John Domani Mahama yeah minimu kasa idea. Wa any a lot of Ghanaian respect. And I say wa any a lot of Ghanaians love omoka wasem. Social media and the John Domani Mahama could declare an asset. Now, one of the things Ghana need be say president and I say government appointee be Babantene Ebabe. Nine there, that's why John Domani Mahama I could declare an asset. I'm a Ghana for you know a Japadie Scado John Domani Mahama ewo. To say what Chinabino, John Domani Mahama, any 10 pesos, that's how the kind of sick and one Ghana for betting me holding accountable, send the bay of him a coin of fast one when you had 10 pesos and all kind of sick and no declare an assets. You know. Or the warning Emman appointees are watching will say, well, my omo echoes in next month, a year March 30th. Appointee bia one more juma, one more a year position biano. So one declare what asset or position at the free wins. In fact, as such here, I was say, ya dem man no John Domani Mahama waiting them made this also channel at the amawo sa appointing way and some John Domani Mahama kind. Or case you know a lot of Ghanaians, including Black Rasta, Ababontinia, also was some can. I didn't say. One dan Jenny send Nioma John Domani Mahama are putting it up and then John Domani Mahama ko betimi ayeda. Nti ade we no John Domani Mahama one no a year Black Rasta one in and I say John Domani Mahama in on Black Rasta no respect. And then you know a lot of Ghanaians so eba bontene ebe can main person kasa bebre no yentie warning na John Domani Mahama e de man appointees and the crowd of us will declare an asset and in some Ghana for eka after so John Domani Mahama declare an asset. I say malikbasintale so when the first number channel so but subscribe share do be video ni bi and share
that they are covered under the assets declaration regime. And so I have presented mine this morning, and let me make a few remarks. Senior government officials present, the Auditor General and staff of your department, we're very happy to have you here this morning at the presidency. Friends of the media, I've just performed a simple but brief, very important act of presenting my completed assets declaration forms to the Auditor General as required by Article 286 of the 1992 Constitution and the Public Office Holders Declaration of Assets and Disqualifications Act 1998, Act 550. Ghana's assets declaration regime and its related activities have often been shrouded in secrecy, and only unless in special circumstances compliance is often difficult to measure. In times past, I would privately have presented these forms to the Auditor General in fulfillment of my statutory obligation. I've taken this step of presenting these forms publicly as a way of injecting some openness and transparency into the process of assets declaration. I've always maintained that while it is all well and good to punish corruption, a more effective way of addressing the canker is preventing it from occurring in the first place. I honestly believe that if properly curated and enforced, the assets declaration process can become a sustainable tool for tackling corruption. Corruption by nature is insidious and thrives under the cover of darkness. The more light that is shone on it, the more likely that it will be fought successfully. I've also taken this step to send an unmistakable signal to all public office holders, especially those that I have appointed, that I take the declaration of assets very seriously and expect full compliance from them. I've asked the Chief of Staff to send word to all appointees to ensure that they declare their assets by the end of the first quarter of this year, that is by 31st March 2025. I wish to stress that any appointee failing to meet this deadline would face severe sanctions, not excluding removal from office. Even as we strive to hold past government officials accountable for their stewardship, I deem it even more imperative to enforce anti-corruption among our present public office holders. Charity, they say, begins at home. I'm therefore determined to take the necessary steps to ensure that we fight corruption vigorously so that the precious little resources that have been entrusted to us by the Ghanaian people are used only in their interest. There have been issues raised about the effectiveness of the current assets declaration regime. We must take advantage of the current constitution review process to strengthen the assets declaration regime to make it more relevant to changing times. I believe that we must move to a regime where the assets so declared can be published before and after public office, so that the phenomenon of unexplained and overnight wealth, obviously earned through the proceeds of corruption, can be checked. I trust that a healthy debate can be had over this issue and consensus built on the way forward, so that collectively we can defeat the unwholesome canker of corruption. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
President Mahama does not cease to amaze me in the second coming. My brother, my sister, I have all of a sudden become a huge fan of the president. Unapologetically. Can I just say that I am the biggest fan of this president? Knowing where this is coming from, I think you would appreciate it. Listen, man. This man was said to be one of the most corrupt leaders we ever had in this country, right? He was labeled as incompetent. His middle name became Dumso. He left office feeling so empty and dry. For 8 solid years, he was in oblivion like a hermit, praying night and day that the God that blessed Abraham and Moses should direct him and give him another chance to prove himself and to walk his ways. In his own words, I prayed to God and he accepted my prayer when I saw that in dreams that I had become president. So I cannot fail God. My brother, my sister, he said whilst he was in opposition, all the Christmas gifts stopped coming. The so-called friends who knocked on his door night and day to embrace him and to lick his boots. Remember, I did not say butts, I said boots. My brother, my sister, all those people, my brother, my sister, stopped short like the clock on grandfather's table. Hear this now. Now he was living like a hermit in the most secluded part of the cave. And when he got the opportunity to bounce back, there were some names he was never going to encourage. And those names I'll keep to myself for obvious reasons. Since Mahama became president again, and remember before he even became president, I made it clear that he stood a unique opportunity to rewrite the political history of this country. A president who was once president, kicked out, he sat back for 8 years, never thinking of returning, then he came back. My brother, my sister, it was a good opportunity to tell him, listen, Mr. President, it looks like we appreciate what you did in the past. This is an opportunity for you to do more. Come back. And I told him he couldn't let the people down. Remember all that? Today, Mr. President, makes tears come out of my eyes. You know why? Number one, Mr. President has banned all his appointees from flying first class or business class. Number two, Mr. President has made it more than just clear, oh Lord God have mercy, that his appointees should be ready to be fired if they were in public to be arrogant, public service to be arrogant. He told them point blank, and much more. My brother, my sister, today I'm reading somewhere, graphic, online, the national communicator, and Mr. President is saying at a forum that Africa should start taking care of its own development. President Mahama urges Africa to finance its own development. And this, my brother, my sister, he is talking to African countries. My brother, my sister, now he has come out, leadership by example, declared his assets publicly, and is telling everyone to do same. This is a serious precedent. I admire you, Mr. President. I could go on and on and on and on and talk about your virtues. Look at oral. Look how my people are frightened. Dirty, corrupt people are having sleepless nights because this president has pulled out his sword from his scabbard, ready to slaughter people in slaughterhouses. Mr. President, if you continue like this, a monument awaits you in your own backyard. As for the monument in so many other places across Ghana and across Africa and beyond, you can't count, just like Kwame Nkrumah did. Mr. President, do everything in your power to live according to the whims and caprices, the dictates of the hearts of the populace. After all, they say the voice of the people is the voice of God. Remember, I am your biggest fan, Mr. President.